Kamlesh, you can start.
Okay. Namaskar. Again, this is lesson 10 now. And this is going to be interesting because so many different kind of issues, contemporaneous, you see, they in northern India, they are tied together. So and this is all Vedic period. So far, we have not been doing a history of dynasties and kingdoms or anything. And today, we are actually starting the background of kings and um, dynasties and how the power center shifted from one place to another. And it was not due to invasion. So these are the kind of threads that we are going to share together and discuss. All right. So this is early Vedic and post-Vedic kingdoms, and this is rise of Saraswati civilization. Now, rise of this means that these two things happened together. So that is why. Now, recorded history, as told in the Puranas, there are a lot of gaps, chronological gaps, jumps. So certain centuries are totally missing in the events, and uh, and certain gaps are there, and even contradictions are there, because these Puranic gathas, they were uh, passed on from generation to generation. Some of them were bards, some of them were street storytellers, and this way it is you cannot really use a authentic kind of timeline. But in any case, we are going to cover uh, as much as we can based on the evidence from Vedic literature and archaeological finds and some of the inscriptions and hieroglyphs. So these are the main sources of today's topic. So we are going to build up some kind of chronology of early kingdoms. It's not a matter of guessing game anymore. I mean, a century here or there does not matter. But making a millennia later or 1 millennium later or 2 millennium later, that is not anymore a guessing game, because the age of the relics can be now determined by carbon dating. And the river channels also, which are now dried and considered probably never existed, they can be images can be made. So satellite imaging can prove what were the main channels and where the delta was submerged in the Arabian Sea or in the West Bengal and Bay of Bengal. So to some extent, from 6500 onwards, when the Vedas were written approximately between that time, uh, 6400 BCE and 4500 BCE, somewhere along the line, all of these developments were happening. So, and those relics are found. And in fact, some paintings inside the caves, which are dated like 20,000 years ago, they can be of help, telling us the social life of the people and hunting patterns and that kind of thing. So it's not basically what I'm trying to say, that it is not anymore a guessing game. So the consensus is that this period began in the 9th millennium BCE and continued 1900. And history is based on hard evidence, and it survived the ravages of time. So 9,000 years of history can be traced and more or less authentic, um, minus the legends and gathas. So it survived the ravages of time. And the sources I have taken is Brahmanas and Puranas, but mostly the concepts of um, kingdoms, how to run and govern, these are found in the Atharva Veda and Yajur Veda. And we are going to count that. Now, this is where we artificially begin that Manu of seventh Manvantara, which is the current Manvantara, had four sons. Now, Manvantara is about 350 million, 310 million years. And Himalaya is dated like 60 million years. So our entire known history, recorded history, mentions Himalaya. So to me, Manu of seventh Manvantara in the beginning of the Manvantara seems like odd and probably not possible. Before the existence of Himalaya mountain range, we really do not have any prior history which can be authenticated by any evidence or any source. So, in any case, Manu was whether in the middle of the 9th century, 9 millennia old, besides the point. The chronology is what matters. That Manu was there and four sons, and we had four sons and one daughter. The daughter moved to Persia, which is at that time called Iran. And then Pururu was Ayush, Nahusha, and Yayati. These were his five sons, and they were controlling different parts of northern kingdom. And this is, I'll show the map also. So Yayati had five sons. Now this is, names one doesn't have to remember, but what we are going to remember is the conflicts and warfare and how the geography and boundaries of the different kingdoms changed. So that's why some of the names will crop up. So Turvasha, Yadu, Puru, Druhu, and Anu. So Turvasha were in the eastern part and northeastern part. Yadus were still there in Gujarat. Krishna was Yadu. So Purus were northwest of Punjab. Druhus were further beyond, somewhere near Afghanistan, and Anus were near, were in Kashmir. So early dynasties started in various parts of northern India, and this is just one dynasty we are talking about. And these are in the northern area. So this is a map I borrowed with permission from Dr. Anand Sharan. And this shows Yadus, and this is Drus, and this is Anu, and this is Puru. These Purus were actually the Puruvas who later were the Kauravas and Pandavas. The Puruvas was the dynasty later on. And here is the Turvasha. So, and here is the Suryavanshi kingdoms, which are not mentioned here, but probably they were in this area. Ishwaku precedes Yayati. So, but then again, that is a Puranic genealogy. If anybody is interested, they can trace the entire history of Raghuvansh, Sri Ramchandra. And these are the major rivers. Some of them have disappeared, but most of the Vedic literature was created in this area, in this area. And major dynasties were in this area. We are not yet talking about the southern India under Vindhyachal Mountains. We are just here, the oldest literature that we find. And Vedas explain the geography, it explains the major concepts, beliefs, kingdoms, wars, rivers, and topography. So, so it is a pretty decent source. Rishis guiding the kings. What is the relation between rishis and kings? You see, the words like Brahminical, Brahmanism, and Brahman supremacy, these are meaningless concoctions given by the British. You see, in order to show some kind of very rigid rule of the Brahmins. And that is why it is necessary that we clarify rishis and kingdoms. So rishis guiding the kings, only guiding the kings, help perform yajnas. Yes, they were purohits, framed the parameters of social ethics. So, which is social behavior, personal ethics and duties, responsibilities. So it created the parameters, authenticated, not enforced. So approved royal decrees. Now the king has issued a decree that this is to be done like this, and even though probably they approved without even questioning, like in Dronacharya and Kripacharya, they were very learned people, and yet they did not question the royal decrees. And these are aberrations, but the idea was that rishis used to approve in the light of the philosophy and their own knowledge, the royal decrees, like your modern day executive orders. So determined rules of warfare. So how to conduct a Dharma Yuddha without hurting the economy, without disturbing the trading or any other social life, how to fight the wars. And without damaging, creating any damage to the buildings, cities, temples, or ordinary citizens, especially women and children. So it was those kind of things they laid down and they were followed. So Dhanurveda is separate shastra. So in this way, these things were explained. You see, each had a separate book. Yeah, I mean, at that time, many were codified and Samritis were created. So separate shastras were existing. Conflicts and warfare. Yes, there were emperors and small kingdoms, and there was conflict and warfare. It is not that everybody was like peaceful. At the realm where the personal ego comes, and the social need or political need is also there to have a central figure. So, in a way, it is not just a matter of ego who will be the emperor or the central force controlling and defending all the small kingdoms and Adivasis and Janpadas, all of them. So, emperors were many kingdoms, the big kingdoms, they vied with each other to become the emperor. And the word used was Chakravarti king to establish the supremacy or sovereignty, and obviously conflict and warfare is there. If they could do it with the alliances by exchanging gifts, or they could do it with some kind of temptations, exchange of vassal kingdoms. But underlying conflict and warfare were always there. Performance of Rajasiva Yajna. This is mentioned in the Vedic literature, which means, and what is the purpose of Rajasiva Yajna? That after defeating all the neighboring or faraway kingdoms, the person who the ultimate emperor, he emerges and then he does the yajna to where the Purohit or the Rajguru would crown him as the emperor of the entire area, including many kingdoms and Janpada, republics. So yajnas involved wars and subjugation. So when the war happens and the Rajasya yajna is performed, they declare that some of the smaller kingdoms are now subjugated. And there was unhappiness or underhand games going on, intrigues. So espionage was necessary at that time, as also now, because the subjugated kingdoms would any time rise up against the Chakravarti kingdom. So it is war for supremacy. But then again, it did not disturb the economy, the society, the trading, international or maritime. The wars were also for preserving Dharma. This war between Ravan and Ram was to preserve Dharma and supremacy. The war between Kauravas and Pandavas, that was for supremacy. And Shri Krishna also involved the word Dharma there, introduced that this war is not for supremacy, it is for preserving Dharma. So these were some of the laudable goals. One can say that Chakravarti aspiration for being a Chakravarti king created conflicts, but at the same time, if there was a central power base and all others are allies, and that means you have more protection. You do not depend on just the natural boundaries. You see, even today they sing that Himalaya is protecting us from the south, and the Hind Mahasagar from the south, and Bay of Bengal and Arab Sagar from the east and west. That's not how it happened. Eventually, those were could be penetrated and were penetrated. So those natural boundaries could not protect the Indian subcontinent. So therefore, supremacy or one central power was needed. And that power base kept shifting towards the east as the invasions happened in the borderlands. And this is worth mentioning war, the Battle of Ten Kings. And the approximate date is 4000 BCE. Vishwamitra and Guru Shishta, they were on the side of King Sudas, who ruled between river Saraswati and Drishtadvati and Yamuna. So I'll go back to the map again and show where Drishtadvati was. See, this is a very controversial kind of river because the traces are found, but the origin is being debated. So far the consensus is that Drishtadvati started from the Vindhyachal mountain and went up and joined Saraswati somewhere which is modern day border of Haryana, and Rajasthan. So that area. And Yamuna, which is now UP, Bihar, and parts of Bengal. So Vedic seers were on the side of Sudras. And the 10 kings who rose against Sudras, who was a Chakravarti king, were from the west and northwest and led by Druze. They challenged Sudha. So those 10 kingdoms were defeated at Kurukshetra. Now, again, we come to the very center of that northern area. If we do not take into account Bengal and Assam and Nagaland, then this is mostly the area of Vedic period, center of that. So Sudha later won another battle at Mathura. This time it was with the Turvashas who were in the eastern part. Now, why this war is important? Because this is where migration from India outward towards northwest and um, uh, parallel western parts that started. So dispersal of the defeated kings was happened after that. So now that also proves that there was no Aryan immigration inside India. It was actually migration outside from India towards us. So dispersal of people across the subcontinent and even beyond that. Subcontinent is the Iran, Afghanistan, and some part of uh, Himalayas and beyond that. But abroad here means the rest of Eurasia, Mongolia, and modern day Russia, and that Eurasia, Greece, Rome, Middle East. That is abroad. I mean, this is roughly division. So westward migration was Pashtas and Balhanas. Now these names must ring a little bit of bell. Pashtuns, they are the northwest frontier, even today. Pashtuns, they were the Pashtas, one of the kingdoms. So this is westward migration from here to here, parallel. And Balochistan. Balhanas was Balochistan. It was also called part of Balhika. So then, I mean, these are names one doesn't have to remember. But the point is that these people, these names, a distorted form of the name is still there. Visyas, Panis, Parthvas, they went to Iran. And Panis, Persians, you see, these Parthvas, they settled in modern day Iran. So movement towards northwest, that was Druze. This is modern day Lebanon, Jordan, and that area. So at that time, there were river valley civilizations between Tigris and some other Jordan River. Now, these Druze, we will do a case study because they are still there. And one of the gentlemen who was familiar, who was from a professor in Newport News University, he gave me a very good idea about the Druze. He is from Lebanon, and he says that these people still exist. And he explained to me their belief system. In the original book, I included that entire 3 paragraphs that he wrote. So northward movement were gypsies and firmament worshippers. I met one of the professors in a conference in Bhopal, and she was from Ukraine, and she said they belong to firmament worshippers. And that was the first time I heard that there is a group who worships natural forces in the sky, like Indians, Bharat, and gypsies. They were roaming, but they were also settled with Indian values. And some of the gypsies who settled from Ukrainian uh, uh, or the Middle East parts, and they settled in Spain and in Western Europe. And these were the gypsies hounded by Hitler. And they say about 2 million of them were killed. But still, there are some who are very proud of their Indian origins. The point is that down the line, how many people can really establish their links to the ancient civilizations? And that is the most important. That history teaches lessons, it also teaches how to defend yourself. If you are just going by Dharam and ideas, stupid ideas like ahimsa as Rajadharam, you are going nowhere. So then this is what will happen. Somebody will be defeating whether outside forces or inside forces, and that will create a dispersal. Commonality. Now, this is also the rise of Pan-Asian culture. And we find temples in Bali, Cambodia, Thailand. In fact, the names were also Kamboj, Champa, Malay, and Bali, Sumatra, of course, Java, Jav, and Siam, which is now Thailand. So, these names suggest, the temples suggest that their connection was from India, Indian subcontinent. So commonalities, belief system. They believe in reincarnation, they believe in uh, cremation, and they believe in Dharma and temple building and worship of nature. And then there are language affinities. Indo-Persian languages, they say they came from Latin. Actually, they came from Sanskrit. So Indo-Persian languages. Practices. Some of the practices are like offering prayer to the sun. That is almost universal in those days. You see, there are so many names in Sanskrit and other languages of India which mean the sun, Ravi, Prakash, and the whole thing, Surya. The common letter in all of those words is R, R, which also became later on the word for Rab, solar from sun. So, and this is the word in later Egyptian civilization, Ra. So that affinities show their link with Indian subcontinent and practices also. So they worship water. And that is where the word Rab came from the sun, Ra, to Apah, Ab. Arabian is Ab. Apah is Sanskrit. So from sun to the depth of the water, that is to be worshipped. So these practices and the names. So music is another thing which is a broad link between Eurasia, Pan-Asian culture. So harp was developed somewhere towards the west, and sitar was here in the middle, and veena was all over the country, and many of the music instruments originated in India. In fact, the entire musical tradition, because Sanskrit is a lyrical language, and most of the literature is in verses. So this is called Vedic and post-Vedic law, which means that which is kind of sung. And shrines were built. There are ling and other shrines almost all over Eurasia. So that is the Pan-Asian culture. Despite wars, despite everything else, the core essence is how the people and the cultures maintain themselves, whether they are here or they go across. The kings went or they defeated is besides the point. So the story of civilization is story of civilization and culture and societies and their evolution. So we are not talking about, my emphasis is not to memorize the names, overemphasize the names. Important names, yes, because they were pivotal events and monumental strategic geographical changes happened, boundaries happened. So, I mean, those names are to be remembered if you want to, but mostly it is how the culture survived and how it penetrated other regions and how it was accepted and given apparent shapes like shrines and temples. So Dru's a case study. This is based on Professor Hassan Timani, and he told me that worldview of the absolute. So they do believe in one divine, absolute creator. The human attitude towards nature is nature worship, and they believe in life after death. So these are the fundamentals of Vedic Dharma. They believe in reincarnation. If they believe in life after death, obviously Atma is going from one place to another or one species to another. So reincarnation, the transmigration of the Atma. They also revert there. He used the word soul, and I left it that way because it's a quote. They also revert their sages. So the true sages detach themselves from all worldly desires. That means austerity is one of the Lakshanam, and meditate most of the time on that. So that means austerity plus devotion and reverence. Some practice celibacy. Our monks do, sages did, and dedicate their life to worshiping the divine. This is again a quote, hence this word God. They are constantly reading the scriptures and strictly follow his teachings and guidance. But he said that in spite of the fact that they have this core philosophy and practices, but those people, they have Muslim names. Now, why they have Muslim names in Lebanon and Jordan and that area, Iraq and nearby places, obviously it is a question of survival. Just as in Iran, about 33% people are Buddhist and Shias, Buddhist and atheists, and the rest are Shias. So you see, why the everybody's name is a Muslim name? Because survival. Okay. Now, monarchy and democracy. This is again a concept. We were talking, if we are talking about kingdoms, we are talking about monarchy. And if we are talking about democracy, then we are talking of where the power base is. Is the power base centered around monarch, or is it the demos, the people? Demo is the Greek word for people. So most of the rishis, they favor democracy, decentralized power and like that. So here's a quote from Atharvaveda. And very recently, in fact, in the last 1 week, I was looking at my notes from previous research on the history, and I was amazed that I had forgotten this thing. And this quote is, let the subjects praja, choose you as their king. So what is it? The king is selected by the people. I mean, how democratic it is. You can say that this is the origin of democracy. The king is selected by the people. Let the subjects choose you as their leader. At the time of coronation, Rajya Abhishek, the king promised to his people, the praja, as follows. King promises. It's like oath or at the inauguration ceremony or oath on the constitution or Bhagavad Gita. It's something like that. He promises to his people, the praja, I will remain in this nation's assembly. See? The word assembly, samiti, is there, and become worthy of its confidence. What is he saying? That I will live by Dharma and by Rajya Dharma, both. Being in following Vedic Dharma, and I'm also respecting the people. I'm protecting you from anarchy within and uh, attacks from foreigners. So they called them militias at that time, become worthy of its cause. It is just like an acceptance speech at the presidential oath ceremony. The king vows to protect the people with the help of court members. So Atri Rishi and many other rishis were the proponents of this. And this particular uh, quote is the numbering I needed to change because that was from the original book. Yet most of the dynasty had orderly succession from father to son. Now here is the question of dynasty, monarch to his son, and like that. Is there a clash between this and this? That is clear from this, that there is no clash. If the succession is from father to son, that is approved by the Rajguru and in the open court of the people, which is the capital. Naturally, the entire kingdom cannot assemble the farmers, the traders, and approve, but the main capital, they used to do that. So the question is, law of primogeniture, was that the key part of dynasties, or was it the selection of the most competent person? Both prevailed. For example, Ramchandraji was nominated for, according to the primogeniture, the oldest son. And selection of the competent person, that was Bharat. King Bharat had 8 sons, and all of them was, according to him, useless. So he decided that the kingdom will pass on to a, a Brahmin. So, so both prevailed, which again gives us it reflects on the fact that there were no rigid kind of dynasties, that you have to have the son, the eldest son, and the rest of the sons are fighting to be the king. So both prevailed according to the situation and the complications of his own progeny. A complex society living in diverse climatic conditions. So guidelines for the rulers, they were provided. Judiciary was there, Nyayapalika, and legal system had from all different Varan groups. Like there were Rajguru, there were Amatyas, ministers, who were the lawmakers under the guidance of the Rajguru, and then there was the executive power. And under the executive power was the army. So, in other words, there was separation of powers. Varanashram itself is separation of powers. But in the legislature, all of them were present. Amatyas, some were shreshtis, who are traders and money lenders, and farmers, and from other one. So legislature had all the trainees and guild representatives. Like there is a trade union representative. That was the guild uh, leader. So this is basically the structure that prevailed in ancient India. And if you think that you can just put it in one column, and this is what was going on, that is that regimentation does not describe the diversity and resilience and the freedom to the of the people, and also freedom of the other helpers, other branches of government to decide. So that is the main point. If anybody says that America is the oldest, first democracy in the world, that is to be thrown in the dustbin, the whole idea. Because democracy basically is a praja tantra, and praja is the main word in Atharvaveda. So here is a quote, another quote from Atharvaveda. I mean, this is just to say, let the subject choose as the leader. I think this is from the previous page. The king is selected by, at the same time, coronation, king promises to his people, I will remain in this nation's assembly and become worthy of its confidence. Again, it is the same thing. Okay. Vedas documented democratic concepts of government. Did they and do they affirm it today? Because it's a living document. So, did they document or do they now? Yes, of course. In those verses, there is no change. Gayatri Mantra is still the same. And so is the desire for peace, aspiration for peace. I mean, those lyrics, 21,000 or so of the Rig Veda, they haven't changed. They have become not known for the reason because nobody knows those rhythm schemes, chand. So at the most, people are familiar, those who are learned in Sanskrit or who are perform these ceremonies, they only know 4 or 5 chand out of 56. So that is how much we have lost due to negligence and ravages of time and the patras on which they were written, they decayed. So the source of power are the people. This is the main thing. Another verse from the Rig Veda, from the Vedas, makes it clear. This is also a Tharva Veda. So the word I have underlined, in us be your power. Us, who is us? Us is the people, we. We the people. In us be your power. In us is your Veda, us. Your wisdom come from us. We are the source. In us be your mental splendor. Bow your head to Mother Earth. You be humble when we choose you as symbol of power. This is your sovereignty now. Once you pledge to the protection of Mother Earth, we accept your sovereignty. We accept your being the controller. We are behind you 100%. Your culture, you will be protecting the land and the culture. See, this is what is important also. I emphasized it because culture is something people don't think that it is to be saved. So what if the Mohammedan came? So what if the British came? What happened to our culture? That got destroyed. People are destroyed. Eventually, everybody dies who is born. So it is the cultural loss of a culture, decimation of culture. And all three major imperialistic forces, in a chronological order, the Christianity, papacy, they destroyed the Pan-Asian culture. The Mohammedans destroyed Islamic imperialism, destroyed the parts of Christian and Pan-Asian cultures. And the American destroyed the natives and the African cultures. So you see how an Pan-Asian culture was spread through the visitors and traders. The ideas traveled, not the souls. So he says, you are for peace, you are for wealth, you are for nurturing us. Again, us. One can find the evolution of civic system and democracy right in this very quote. So one can think about it, how much we owe to our ancient traditions and how independent India destroyed the very basis of democracy enshrined in the Vedic literature. Now, Veda and Niti Shastra, important socio-political terms, these are the Puranas. It still exists, ancient law. They contain history, legends, genealogies of the kings and dynasties. Whether you remember all the genealogies or not, immaterial. But the fact that these words are still used, it survived all these 9 millennia, that is why it is remembered. Durga, ambassador. Janraj, self-government. Panchayat, rural government by 5 elected. Parishad, council. Sabha, assembly. Smiti, committee. So these are original words in the Puranas and the Vedas. Now global realities, because I said in the beginning that all this ancient Indian history that I am teaching or I have written or rewriting it, this is in the global context. Because they have built a global context for judging us. When they are talking about the caste system, they are comparing it with their slavery. So their mapping is of Indian traditions and customs and cultures is through their own lens and some deliberate stretching and distortion. So what was happening in Middle East and Eastern Europe right up to the 18th century? Feuds, slaves, and they introduced that system in India. You see, which was the most exploitative system. Not for the tenants, for the jamindars also. And somewhere when we are talking about the economic tradition in ancient India, we will be able to see how jamindari system hurt. In fact, in the history of the last 200 years partition, I have mentioned that. So we never had feuds working for aristocrat, warlords, and we never had slaves. We never had patricide. There is one example where Aparajita, one of the Ajat that was the name, he tried to kill his father because the father was becoming Buddhist. And Ajat the name itself says that the enemy of his own parent. So fratricide, killing of brothers, and like that. The torture chambers. Those of you who have gone to Europe and neighboring places, you should really visit some of those basements, underground torture chambers. One of them that I visited, I'll never forget, I wish I could. This is in Germany, Würzburg. And the straight monorail goes all the way to the top of the hill. There is a castle and the torture chambers. So you can imagine 1,000 feet above, and they had made large holes, and the person is hanged with lead on his feet upside down. So you can imagine how dismemberment of the body takes place. I mean, it's absolutely, but one should at least visit or see the pictures of that. Dismal, and absolutely it violates humanity. So then divine rights appears. That king can do anything. He is given the right to rule from heavens or some divine person. We don't believe that. Feud and slave zamindari systematic. Papacy as the dictator over rulers. We don't have a church head, a religious head who is the dictator for all the kingdoms, small kingdom, big kingdom. No way. We don't have that kind of thing, and we never could. First of all, our papacy would mean a presiding person on the Brahmins, and three Brahmins would never agree with each other on the philosophic issues. They are forever sharpening their logic. So we can never have a dictator from among the ranks of Brahmins to dictate anything on all the rulers. So we don't have. Papacy determined marriage alliances between rulers. See? So that kind of thing, luckily, we never had. Vedic and Indus Saraswati civilization. Now, this is again a lot of mythical things. First of all, they say Saraswati was never there, so it is Indus civilization. And it was a unique civilization, the most modern and stuff. Whereas Vedic was primitive, barbaric, and sati system, child marriage. You can add any kind of off-base, stray incident. Now the point is they were contemporaneous and had common underpinnings, both philosophic, traditional, culture, and practices, obviously. So chronology needs to be readjusted. Rigvedic age begins 4500 BC. This is a conservative estimate. Actually, it took several millennia to write. So some people say 6500 BC. Advanced phase of Indus period begins around 4000 BC, where urban complexes were created, industrial civilization reached its peak, and this was this period. Industrial civilization declined. Now, the reason why it declined, the British sources and the British history books and Indian stupidity known as history book, they mention that the Aryan kings, they invaded the Indus Valley people and around 1900 BCE. And then, they converted the dark-skinned Indians and pushed them toward the south and made them Dasyus. Dasyu word is Sanskrit word. It means servant, Das. In fact, Christian names in India are Yasudas, Ramdas. What does that mean? He is not a slave of anybody. Das is that he is a servant of the Lord. Here, Dasyu meant nothing, servants. So these are the conservative dates. Now, if the scientists continue ecology, geology, archaeology in these fields, finding more artifacts and do more satellite imaging and find more sources of history, authenticate cross-reference it, these dates may be predated. It cannot be post-dated. We cannot say it happened to yesterday. So it has to be predated with more, just as paleobotany, paleobotany emphasized one find in Bihar of uh, rice, husk rice. And that gave us a clue when it was carbon dated 15,000 BC. So see, one find, and then naturally it gave them the clue, let us go further and further and further. If we keep going like this, maybe we'll trace back to earlier period or predate them. Many of the Vedic traditions are still followed by millions of people all over the world. And shifting power base, Chakravarti Raja. Power base was Indus Valley, and river courses change of rainfall, earthquakes in that area. Even today, there are a lot of earthquakes almost every other day. Vishnadvati and Saraswati dried up, Thar desert appeared. But in the last about 20, not more than that, I think, last about 50 years, they have found 2,100 major cities in the northern belt. And only a few are in Pakistan. They say Indus Valley meant only uh, West Punjab. Actually, it is East Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, and down Gujarat. Most of them. And they are on the banks of Saraswati River. So there are urban complexes and pastoral society. And now they have the Western so-called Indologists. They mentioned that only urban complexes were there. There was no pastoral society. How are they going to eat? Without agriculture, they will be living. So many tribal societies existed side by side. Some of these were urban, some were kingdoms. And many of them were miners in that area, central India and northern India, right up to the Hyderabad, what today is Hyderabad, Andhra Pradesh, lot of mines. And these Adivasis or forest dwellers, they were actually mighty powerful people because they were miners. And mining means they are also welders, and they created alloys. So they pretty sophisticated systems. No mention of any foreign group here. So this dark-skinned slaves pushing to the south, all nonsense. Now here is one Western philosopher. He says there is homogeneity of the South Asian population for at least 70,000 years. At least 70,000 years. So no mention of such an event mentioned in Tamil literature, that the Sioux came and we are the descendant of the original Indians. It is not mentioned in Sanskrit literature. Hieroglyphs. Now they say that Indus Valley people had script hieroglyphs and they had no literature. How do they communicate with each other if they don't have any communication language? And how did they develop the script? Script cannot be without a language. So there is absolutely a great researcher. I happen to know him personally. He has given me a lot of pictures of artifacts. He deciphered the Indus script. His name is Dr. S. Kalyan Rama. So he found these picture symbols and connected them with the Sanskrit words, one or two. If there is a word loha and then the rest is a picture, then you are talking about metallurgy of iron. So that way he has, and he sent me the book. Since it is metallurgy, and you have to know Sanskrit and interpret the hieroglyphs, um, the whole book went above my head, except some of the artifacts. The relics tell us a splendid story. These are all from the Indus Valley, in Indus Saraswati. Actually, Saraswati, mostly. See? This is from Lothal. It is in Gujarat. Horse bones, Sarkota, which is Kutch, and Chaucer. This is all over northern India. And this is various tools. Even today we use this hammer and the ring, neck ring around the cattle. And this is the nose ring for the cattle. Naturally, they were pastoral people as well. So, and these are some of the relics that he has given in his book. And this is the tools used during that period. Here is a picture of a ruler found at Lothal. So it has both decimal and inches. So the decimeter is smaller lines, and the inch at that time was 1 inch a little plus. So it was not exactly 1 inch. Okay. Structural ringstone. If you can make a structure like this in 2500 BC, you are really very advanced. And this was in Dholavira. And this is part of the reservoir. You see, Saraswati River was a mighty river. They needed reservoirs. So layout of Mohenjo-daro drainage system. This is brick technology. Ruler was needed in order to create uniform size of the bricks, which can wedge into each other without the mortar. And this is a sewer system. So the sewer is covered, and water pipes, clean water pipes, they go into ponds for the bathing and drinking purposes. And these are the sites. Pakistan has these sites. Maybe they have more, but why we don't have more? Because Pakistan became died as a culture and as a civilization. So when there is hunger and anarchy, who thinks about excavations? So even Dakshila and the excavation in the last 50 years, that is done by the Americans, different layers. So see all these that tiny dots, they are along these rivers. Yes. So it comes up to right here. Gujarat, ran of Kutch, all of this. So we should have a grid system with all these river systems, crisscross rivers. And now many of them are dried up, and this area is desert. So what are we going to do with the several issues where the rivers are inundated, or they have changed the courses and left the place barren, or if there is arid climate, not much rainfall, then what are we going to do about that? So Kalyan Raman, about 20 years back, 25 years back, suggested this to avoid the flood issues, irrigation problems, arid regions providing irrigation. We have to create a grid system, which means connecting the rivers through canals, and then where there is a possibility of inundation, we create the reservoirs. And it cannot be in the hilly areas. You cannot create a grid system in the Himalayas. Nangal, Bhakra Nangal is a disaster, proving to be a disaster, because so much mudslide happens and chokes the dam, chokes the reservoir. Automatically, the level keeps rising because the sedimentation. Plus, Himalaya has a lot of salt, so salinization is also a problem. So these problems can be solved if there are smaller size of dams and reservoirs, which can be cleaned on an ongoing basis. And the Congress government ignored this idea of grid system. Financial problems. Really? Why? India didn't have resources, not a tax base. So what were the financial problems? That is your guess is as well as mine. Having said that, um, this is too much of information and dense. So let us go with the original. Okay. It was a lot of issues discussed. So, are there any questions? Too much information. Yes. Yes.
Hey, Sasrikal, Namaste Aunty ji. Thank you for this amazing presentation. I really liked all the quotes you shared about democracy and Dharma. I think that was a really nice touch. I have 4 questions, so I'll just try to go through them because I know we're a little over time. So first, are rishis uh, like on the physical plane, or are they like angelic beings? Where are they on?
They are human
Uh,
beings.
they're human beings. Okay. Um, the second question was for do you know if there's I think there's a lot of claims that Pythagoras went to India. I read that a lot there uh, because a lot of his influence on music and the harmony of spheres I think came from in probably his travels in India, but I'm not sure if you've come across that in your research or books for Pythagoras.
That we haven't come yet.
Okay.
The theorem did exist in there's a book on mathematics. Um, I am not getting the name right this minute, but an Arya Bhatt was a person. The formula of pi was already there much before. So this number system, along with the word geometry is Sanskrit word. Miti means measurement. So
Oh.
geometry means the space. Geo is space, and measuring it is geometry, trigonometry, measuring the angles.
Mm.
That is trigonometry. You see, so
Okay.
decimal system, both decimal system existed and binary system also existed. So
Okay.
Sanskrit language has the indications how to do the binary number system.
Okay. Okay.
But
Got it.
this will come later when,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
we are too far away from that yet.
Okay. Thank you. It was also nice to know about the firmament worshippers. I didn't know they existed either.
Yeah,
Um, my last question is just wondering if you could expand on the wars to preserve Dharma, like that notion. Uh, it was, I think, slide number 3 or 4, but there was wars to preserve Dharma. I just wanted to know, like, what does that mean, or yeah, what does that entail?
what is to be preserved? What?
Wars, yeah, wars to preserve Dharma. I think that was one of the on slide 3 or 4. I have to
Yeah,
check.
rishis. Is the
Yeah, it was part of the ruling of nations, the handbook. There was a notion of a war exists as part of dharmic
oh yes,
preservation.
yeah, I
Yes.
understand. Conflict and
Yeah.
not. Okay,
Yeah.
yes. Uh, so it is Shri Krishna says that when there is a dharma and society is falling apart, or society is being ruled by a despotic king, or ruled by incompetent king who is blind.
Yeah.
I mean, a blind person cannot rule a country, should not. He should not have
Mhm.
been a king to begin with, right? And so, such a person who cannot see what his own sons are doing, being in power, that society cannot survive. So, dharma, and when society is destroyed, culture is destroyed, nobody is taking care of it. Foreign enemies will also come, but inner enemies will be taking advantage of creating anarchy. And some parts of Kuru kingdom, there was anarchy. There were cases listed in Mahabharata. So the war is necessary, conflicts are necessary to establish the preserve dharma, culture,
I see.
and your way of living, orderly way of living.
I
And
see.
that dharma also means preserving the environment and respect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
ecology.
true. Yeah.
So not disturb
Uh,
ecological balance.
okay. No, this is very helpful. Thank you. It's good to know there's places where pacifism and neutrality are not recommended.
No,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You see, dharma itself is to be, like there is a checks and balances. Nobody has absolute power. It is divided. So, and torture in later literature, I did find mention of, basements. Um, uh, uh, there is a special Sanskrit word for basement. It escapes me now. That is where the prisoners were kept and tortured in order to find out who was the king for which whom they were spying. You see, but that is much much later.
I
When
see.
there are plentiful resources and there are pastoral societies, everybody is contented. Dharma says, be contented.
Hmm.
You see, and preserve nature. Then where is
Hmm.
the reason for clash?
Hmm.
You have abundance. So looting or torture is not necessary
Hmm.
unless you are doing it just because you are a dharmic.
Yeah.
The war is for that. And also to establish a Chakravarti supremacy. This part later on, at the Chanakya created a whole name of power great. And we will do that. It's amazing how he created, that in the center there is the supreme kingdom, and there are allies, and then there are allies of allies, and then there are spheres of influence, the whole satellite system, which we now call satellite powers or power influence.
Mhm.
They were existing at that time, but they came much later. So once the espionage was introduced on a wide scale basis for those who penetrated from other, um, other places as spies, torture was used. At
Hmm.
least I read a few paragraphs here and there. I have not much knowledge. And I haven't, I have visited India's temples and every palaces also. I never saw a torture chamber.
Hmm. Um,
Yeah. Okay, good morning. I also have a question.
Yes,
You talked about migration out of India to nearby countries.
yes,
There is a theory that around the last ice age, when Bering Bridge between Alaska and Russia was solidified with ice. Humans actually walked from Asia, and one wonders if they were from India all the way to North America as well as South America. And that's why when you go to Mexico, the Mayan temples, gods they worship are very, very similar to Indian culture.
Yeah. There are two ways they traveled. There was, I did not mention yet, the ocean going trade, deep ocean going trade and shipbuilding. You see, the ships were built in such a way that no iron was used. It was resin coated uh, wooden pins, like modern furniture is also, where wooden nails are used, kind of. So the ships are made like that. And then they were made with teak wood coated with resin, so water does not damage and nothing gases. These were called ocean going, uh, deep ocean going vessels. So there was a trade between, in ancient literature, it was called Patal, the other side of, uh, you know, other side of the globe, Earth. So it actually is other side, not going deeper in, but traveling on the surface, it is on the other side. So that was one way of trading and influencing ideas and cultures. The other was that original Native Americans, because that area was entirely Holocene period, up to 11,000 BCE, it was all up to 8,000 even. So the retreating, especially in Canada and America, the ice age melted and then came back again. Iceberg floated down. So you see that back and forth thing was not sustainable for human civilization or nativity. So people who traveled farther and farther, they went by a frozen part of Bering Strait. You see that narrow little sea which separates eastern Russia and Alaska. That little 8 mile strait, Bering Strait, it is called, that was frozen. So if it is frozen, you can walk over.
And
Most of the migration went by land like that. And then they spread south. Why? Because North was not, they are not going to stay in Alaska, frozen land. So they keep going down and down towards Mexico and beyond the equator. So that is why Central America, which is tropical, was the seat of civilization in ancient times. Not as back, far back, but approximate.
Rohit
All
Mehta
right.
ji has a question.
Yeah, so a couple of
Mhm.
questions. Very fascinating. I joined later, so you may have covered this already. Two questions. So, first one, you mentioned that the migration in the past uh, through Bering Strait. So Alaska is connected to Russia, right? So how come we don't see um, any presence of Hindu culture or Sanatan culture in Russia, that part of Russia, if that was the route migrated, I mean, used for migration?
Yeah, migration you see happens where through the area which has more temperate climate. Near the water bodies, the temperature is slightly, even. It's not too cold, not too hot, or it does not respond to that much of temperature variation season-wise or day and night-wise. So, so up to Mongolia, you can go through the deserts and you go through the valleys and the sheltered areas, and finally you can find ice and I mean Himalaya has a lot of ice, and people go there and make caves and live there. So it was possible to go across that. And it did happen. They say that 40,000 years back, Indian subcontinent, is, many people went. Why they went, or were they Chinese who came to India and went, or Japanese? Japanese civilization is not very old. Chinese is about 3,000 recorded history, 3,000 BC. But these developments are much, much earlier. Probably there was some kind of danger, animals, landslide, some reason people disperse. And then there are people like us, we disperse for no reason at all. So, but there was a motivation at that time, an adventure. But once they found that they crossed the Bering Strait, didn't stay there. It was all ice age for the next 2,000 years. So they kept coming up. So most of the native Indians, they lived on the west coast, coastal regions, not in the central Dakotas and all those places.
Could that be the source of so Native Indians, some tribes, especially in North America, they use swastik or similar to swastik as as a holy symbol. Could there be some connection or link to this migration theory?
Yes, dispersal of people means dispersal of ideas. Trade means exchange of ideas. So it is the Arabian traders who took the number system from India. Traders did take,
Right.
you see, ideas. And migrants also, dispersal also. Like Druze, I gave the example. They took those, and gypsies took the idea. I met a person in here. He's a very, uh, he's a landscaper, big company. And he's from Spain, very thick accent of Spain. And he's a gypsy. I had an interesting conversation with him. This is how you learn. This is exchange of ideas. And this is what India had. And he says, we gypsies believe in this. Right away, we have a discussion on a common thing. That gypsies went, gypsies dispersed, and the ideas went all over those areas.
Can I ask one more question? I read some time ago an article that in Syria, there's actually a group of people, I forgot what they're called. Their language is Sanskrit based.
Yes, I also learned that, but I haven't met anybody in any conference, and I haven't read literature on that. And the Ukrainian professor who came and firmament worshippers, she did not mention the Sanskrit language. But there in Russia, there are pockets where Sanskrit is spoken.
Right.
And I
I
have
had
not
a
been able to
roommate.
research yet.
I had a roommate from Lithuania when I was in college, and when he spoke, I could understand the numbers actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
numbers even Spanish you can understand.
But
Those.
these were actually Sanskrit based, like 10. He used the word dasam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Actually, certain letters do not exist in Latin language, and that is why the words were little corrupted.
Hmm.
So the original sound, like is not there. So they do not have a th sound unless you combine two letters and you really manipulate the language. But other than Sanskrit has 65 letters, vowel, sound, and consonants together.
Right.
So this
Right.
is the largest body of alphabet.
Right.
Yes, these names, Malakoff, and there was another one like that, name of one of the dictators in Russia. And that was Malketu. Malkev, Malay Ketu, Malay. So it became Malako.
Okay.
So they Sanskrit words were there, but then they're influenced by the local dialects.
Mm.
And the original thing vanishes. It has vanished. We have destroyed, Western civilization had destroyed at least 6,000 native languages and tribes. That is what imperialism is.
I'll give you one last question, I promise, just to add to Rohit's line of thinking. Were the Zoroastrians a parallel civilization, or were they, did they ever cross paths for, our, the Dharmic Vedic tradition?
The next one lesson is on Buddhist and Zoroastrians.
Okay.
So Zoroastrian, that area was ruled by the descendants of Ila, who was Yayati's daughter and Manu's daughter. So she ruled there. There's a river even today called Ilavati River. And the word divine in Persian, Ilahi, that is a derivative of Ilah. Divine Ilah came from there. And Ilah also means Pratibha, genius. So in every way, divine is described as Ilahi. And from there, the Arabic root was taken, Allah.
Oh, I see.
Allah, Ilahi, Ilah, Ilah river. Yeah. And these were, yeah. So we will talk about Zoroastrianism, how similar, because one of my friends here, she is from Zoroastrian. She's Zoroastrian, Parsi.
And is that Iran nowadays, or like?
Oh, yeah.
That's today. Okay.
Today, there are the most famous uh, researchers and innovators and entrepreneurs. They were Parsis in India. Ratan Tata. Tata is Manik Shah, Homi Bhabha. I can name quite a few who were the most famous Parsis. But they are declining. They have a very marital that when a woman marries across religion, a tradition, it is not the mother's religion that follows. Children follow the father's religion. So they are like caught in the two different traditions. So I should do something. You idiot, you will be destroyed and you will be extinct.
Mhm.
More and more women, if they marry Muslims or they marry Christians, and you don't count, the father's religion counts, then how is your small community, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
Where will Jamshedji come from?
Mm.
Right? So, but we will do that, the rest also, when we do the similarities and how the belief system and practices. But it is interesting to know that, you know, they were all native nature worshippers. Ra from Apa. So, okay, I think that's all. Because,
Yeah, I think we can end for today.
yeah. And in any case, some feedback comes afterwards to me as email, and I answer to the best of my capacity. And yes, if there is any question in anybody's or I did not clarify something, please write to me. I'm usually good in reply. Okay. Namaste. See you next time.
Namaste.